I could not do this podcast without the support of sponsors, and I want to take a second to recognize a couple of them right here. Holiday shopping season is right around the corner, and what better way to show your coach, your athlete, how much you appreciate them than by getting them a piece from the Cheer collection. Hey, you can even get a little something for yourself here too. The Cheer collection is inspirational style for every cheer enthusiast. It's beautiful, minimal jewelry that has inspirational quotes that are specific to cheerleading, like hit 0 and 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Visit thecheercollection.com and enter coupon code CHEERMOMPOD for 10% off of your order. Are you looking for a fresh new look for your team this season? Check out Prodigy Cheer Apparel. Work with their dedicated team to create a style that you love. Their team of artists create 100% customizable tees, tanks, practice wear, warm-up gear, bags, accessories, and more. Get your quick quote for pricing at prodigycheerapparel.com. Wow. What a week. I mean, I put that episode out last week because I felt like I had a duty to. And I know that you hear people say this all the time. It's becoming cliche almost that I had no idea that it would resonate as much as it did with as many of you as it did. And I am grateful. I'm grateful that it meant something to you. My heart's desire is that it means something to this story that is unfolding on behalf of the victims, and that it will mean something for change. So today, I want to just say thank you. Welcome to the new listeners. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to those who left reviews. Let me just wow. I'm going to read a couple of these. Recat says, whether you're new to cheer or been around for a while, this podcast is incredible. It's so informative and helps explain so many different components of the spirit industry, valuable info with how to support your child, and awesome ideas to keep them in a good headspace. SM Brown 28 says, my daughter has done performance rec cheer for 3 years, and we have made the jump to all-star this year. Walking into the middle of a conversation, you nailed it. This is exactly how I feel. I'm so excited about this podcast. Can't wait to catch up on the rest of the episodes. And there are more. And none of them are my family or friends. I don't know any of these people, so thank you. Thank you for leaving these awesome reviews. It really does help the podcast in lots of ways. So thank you for those reviews and ratings. Okay. Today, I'm going to do a part 2. It's going to be a little bit lighter. I will still give that content warning that I will do a brief summary of what's going on. If you're just jumping in, it'll just be a couple of sentences. But I'm just going to do a part 2, and I'm going to talk about like now what, right? We're going to get a little bit deeper into what we can be doing and asking as parents. And I've gotten dozens of questions via DMs and emails. And so I'm going to go through a few of those at the end. We're going to talk about what this could mean for cheerleading in the long run, what it might mean for this season. So let's get into it.
All the moms in the world, let's chat it up. We're talking competitions, uniforms, and all of the above. It's the Cheer Mom, yes, the Cheer Mom podcast. Cheer Mom, yes, the Cheer Mom podcast. Cheer Moms, your podcast is on.
You guys, again, I have so enjoyed interacting with all of you over this last week. So let's continue that conversation, whether it's about this or other aspects of cheerleading. You can always send me an email, hi@thecheermomblog.com. I am at the Cheermomblog on Instagram. You can DM me there. Let's connect. You can also leave me a voicemail. If you just go to thecheermompodcast.com, you can record a voicemail and I might play it on the show. Okay, so now what? Now where do we go from here? If you're just joining the conversation, there have been widespread allegations throughout the all-star cheer industry specifically, and specifically against a gym called Rockstar Cheer that basically has ceased to exist. They shut their doors. Their affiliates, or the gyms that had been licensed through Rockstar across the country, have changed their names, and the program is no more as a direct result of these allegations. The man who was mainly accused of being responsible for the events that happened was found dead in his car, and it was intentional death. He intentionally ended his life. So the All Star world has kind of been reeling over these allegations. There has been at least 2 lawsuits that I know of. I have read that there will be more coming from the Strom law firm. They gave a quote to one of their local news outlets that additional victims may be coming forward. And not only is Rockstar Cheer and Scott Foster, their owner and founder, named in the lawsuit, along with several other coaches and people in the industry, it's also brought against Varsity and all of its affiliates. So, Varsity Brands, Varsity Spirit, Varsity Fashion, and also the USASF and others. And that covers basically all of the all star cheer industry, right? So, we're going to kind of go through step by step, how have these organizations responded to this? How have they responded in general? And we're going to get into what you can be asking of your gym, maybe what you can expect from your gym, and what we as parents can do. Okay, so let's start with Varsity. Varsity, again, is the largest brand in the all star cheer industry through events, uniforms, etc. And Jeff Webb is the founder of Varsity and the former president. And he is also specifically and individually named in the lawsuit. And Jeff Webb, through a PR representative, gave a statement to independent news outlet Fitz News, and I have permission to read this. It says Mr. Webb finds the allegations of sexual abuse associated with Rockstar Cheer to be heartbreaking, and he supports a full and thorough investigation of the allegations. He fully stands with the survivors. Mr. Webb's 40-year career has been committed to making cheer a beneficial experience for the participants, including ensuring their health and safety. He has been a leader in creating modern-day cheerleading and has been at the forefront of establishing and promoting safety rules and standards for all levels of cheer athletes. The all-star gym companies, like Rockstar, are privately owned entities and are operated by individual business owners. Mr. Webb has never had any management or operating authority whatsoever over privately owned gym companies like Rockstar or their owners, coaches, and employees. Mr. Webb left his CEO and president position at Varsity in 2016, after which he had no executive management authority in the company and no involvement in its day-to-day decisions or operations. In December of 2020, he left the employment of Varsity solely to focus on the International Cheer Union and other business opportunities outside of cheerleading. Mr. Webb denies all accusations in the lawsuit and highlights that the complaint alleges no facts that he engaged in any conspiracy or misconduct, nor that he was aware of any sexual misconduct by others. Any suggestions to the contrary are spurious and defamatory. The complaint does nothing more than further reinforce Mr. Webb's role in helping to create a sport that has benefited millions of young athletes. Mr. Webb will be filing a motion to dismiss the meritless lawsuit. So that's the statement by Jeff Webb. I do want to point out that that is not Varsity's statement. That's neither here nor there, but this is Jeff Webb as an individual. And there are lots of questions that you guys have asked about Varsity, and we'll get into that later on in the episode. Next, let's get into the USASF. And really, what should we be expecting from the USASF? I think a lot of people are very angry with the organization and really had expected that they would do more. And here's the deal, guys. The USASF is only a membership organization. They create uniform rules and policies within All Star Cheerleading, but they are not an enforcement agency. They are not the police. And so there's only so much that they can do to regulate these private business owners and these private gyms. Okay. But here's what they have provided. They provide resources on their website. So if you go to usasf.net, there is a link right at the top that says athlete protection. And when you click on that link, it gives all kinds of resources for next step. And the very first sentence says, the next step for All Star, you spoke and we listened. And it says, in a recent survey of USASF athlete parents, we asked what was the most important thing to you. You put athlete protection at the top of your list, and we agree. Since our beginning, the overall health, safety, and well-being of athletes stands alone as our top priority. They talk about what they have done to promote athlete safety, and it goes on to say, still, we believe there's a smarter and safer future for All Star. So what the USASF has done is they have partnered with an independent agency called Safe at All Star. And they actually entered into that agreement in May of 2021. So this was not reactionary. They've been proactive in employing these resources for the All-Star community, and Safe at All-Star is one of them. A little bit about Safe at All-Star, you can kind of see for yourself. I don't want to take too much time explaining things because I want to get to your questions, and I want this to be a shorter episode than last week. But Safe at All Stars mission at the top of their website says prepare, prevent, protect. They provide training and strategies for gyms, for coaches, for parents to provide a safe environment for athletes. And they actually give, it looks like, some additional resources and even maybe some price breaks for members of the USASF. So they are a direct partner, although independent, with the USASF. The USASF has also made their unified ineligibility list public. They call it the UIL. And there's a list of people who are either temporarily or permanently ineligible to attend USASF sanctioned events. They do link to public records when applicable, so you can look at that list as well. They also have a pretty extensive code of conduct that is also publicly available. And even just in the first sentence, it says the U.S. All-Star Federation is a membership organization that sets standards and expectations for its members as outlined in this code of conduct and compliance. So again, that wording, I interpret, it's very specific. They're a membership organization that can set the standards and the expectations. It is up to the individual programs to make sure that their employees, that their coaches and their staff are meeting those expectations. And we'll get into what I believe that all gyms should be doing. I honestly think that they should be going above and beyond, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Their code of conduct talks about the jurisdiction of the USASF and what they can and can't do, recommended policies. It's actually, I believe, a requirement to make for gyms to make their own code of conduct policies available as part of their membership of the USASF. So I would take a look at their code of conduct. It's right there. I will also link all of these as always. One thing that will be interesting to watch and see what happens is this overlap between varsity and the USASF. I do think that they have made some changes over the years in what's available, and we covered that a little bit in the last episode, but I would really love to see less varsity involvement in the USASF and more public involvement, whatever that looks like. So since starting the Cheer Mom blog, I've actually had contact with people at the USASF. And one thing that, and we have shared it, resources. One thing that I would love to see at the USASF is a seat on their committees or board for a parent voice or voices. And I've actually volunteered to do that several times. So I would like to see that happen. I would like to see some kind of parent representation at the USASF first and foremost. So if there's ever an opportunity to contact the USASF, or if they host a town hall, I don't know whether they will or not, but if there's an opportunity for that communication, I think that we as parents can ask for a parent voice on the USASF board or even a parent advisory committee. But it will be interesting to see the steps that varsity and the USASF take to make themselves separate entities. They are separate entities on paper, but I do think that there is a lot of varsity influence in the USASF. And as a caveat to that, honestly, I think it's part of it is because the cheer world is so small. There are not a lot of people involved in the cheer industry that really know the industry. Our sport is still a very young sport, relatively speaking, about 22 years. So the people that founded cheerleading and that created the sport of all-star cheerleading are still, for the most part, very involved in the sport. And so there hasn't been a lot of opportunity for new faces and other perspectives because our sport is so small. And so there is that overlap in varsity and everything else. Because if you think about it and you think about the information that we talked about in the last podcast episode, Jeff Webb was basically like the second founder of All Star Cheerleading. Lawrence Herkimer invented it. Jeff Webb was his protege. And then Jeff Webb went and created UCA and then eventually varsity, right? It's still a very small industry. So for the USASF, let's find the appropriate channels to ask for parent involvement. And then really let's watch and see what they do moving forward. There's going to be a response to these lawsuits. There is going to be more that comes out. And so I'm interested in seeing it play out. Okay, so what can we be asking of our gyms? I've gotten a lot of questions and people asking to go deeper into this subject. What can our gyms be doing? I would hope that every all star gym in the country right now is bringing truth to light and addressing this to their families. If that's an email reinforcing your current policies, maybe that's all you have to do. But I really hope that gyms are taking steps and looking inward to make sure that they have checked all of the boxes as far as what more can we do? What have we been doing to make sure our athletes are protected, and is there more that we can do? So I mentioned earlier that Safe It All Star. There's another compliance company called Sports Compliance, and these agencies are in some cases teams of lawyers, other experts and professionals that work with these private businesses, the all-star cheer gyms, to not only be compliant with what agencies like the USASF are asking of them, but like I said earlier, they encourage and invite them and train them to go above and beyond. I know this because my gym that I was associated with actually contracted with sports compliance, and the sports compliance representative came, and it was a required parent meeting. She spoke with parents without athletes present and spoke candidly about what we can be looking for, the conversations that we can have with our kids, even down to the kinds of photos that our gym should or should not be posting of our athletes on social media. Yeah, they got that detailed, and I really appreciated it. They gave us all kinds of resources, and then they spent an entire day. It might have been 2 days. I know they spent an entire day with our coaching staff and also had spent additional time with our owners and leadership, just training them on appropriate policies on keeping our athletes safe. And so I would ask your gym, hey, have you considered working with one of these agencies to come in and give resources? They help write policies, they help train parents, they help with those difficult conversations. I think you should also be asking your gym to make their policies available. They need to make their policies surrounding coach athlete relationships and policies around athlete protection public to their families at the very least. So ask your gym what their policies are as it relates to athlete safety. This is going to be a tough one, but I think that there's a way for the gyms to have age appropriate conversations with the athletes. And of course, parents can and should be present for those conversations, or at least know what the content of those conversations is going to be. But I think, especially with the older athletes, I think the expectation needs to be set with what the coach athlete relationship is going to be. So I think at minimum, the coach can be like, listen, we're not going to text each other unless your parent or guardian is on the text thread. Hey, we love you guys, but we won't be following you on social media. And here's why. Okay. So that is sensitive and it needs to be done really well. Again, I think that's another reason to have one of those outside agencies to train your gym on how to have those conversations. But I think they need to be had. I think that all Star Cheerleading has promoted this caring about the whole athlete. If we care about the whole athlete and not just what they're doing in the gym, or not just focusing on the athletic component of cheerleading, then we need to be having conversations about what's okay and what's not okay and how to be looking out for each other. So, work with your gym on what that conversation looks like, and maybe it's just as simple. Again, I'm not an expert. I'm not an attorney. I don't know what the laws are where with what gyms are allowed and not allowed to ask of parents, or allowed and not allowed to say. But I think even if a gym got resources with here are the talking points that we would like you to sit down with your athlete and have, I think that could be helpful too. So definitely ask your gym for a parent meeting if it's just you or if it's all of the parents in the gym, to have a conversation specifically about this topic and what they're going to do for athlete protection and safety moving forward. If I were still an all-star parent, I would want to know what my gym's HR policy is surrounding these issues. So if something is reported, what is reported by an athlete or a parent, what is the gym's policy and what steps are they going to take to discipline that employee? And will there be transparency around that? And you guys, most importantly, we need to be having these conversations with our kids at home. There is not a formula that I know of that exists on how to have those conversations without awkwardness or perfectly, but we need to be having these open conversations with our kids. And I'm to be looking for an expert to bring on the show to help us navigate those conversations, right? Because that extends way beyond cheerleading and having those conversations about how to be safe and how to advocate for yourself. But we need to have those. And I will find as many resources as I can and link them in all of the places. But having those open lines of communication with our kids is our best shot at protecting them. At the end of the day, we can't control what the cheer industry does. We can't control what happens with this lawsuit. And we can't control what happens in our gym, but we can control our relationship with our kids. And that's going to be crucial. Okay, let's get down to a few of your questions that you sent in. So I actually had a coach reach out and ask, how can we as coaches give parents peace of mind? And my answer to them was communication, communication, communication. We can't afford not to talk about this in some form or fashion. I think it needs to be addressed in every nook and cranny of the industry. we cannot sweep it under the rug and say, well, that happened all the way across the country. It doesn't really affect our athletes. We don't really want to upset people. There is an appropriate way to talk about it and address it. I think the more awareness that we have, the more informed we can be. And so communication between parents and coaches needs to be at the forefront. I go live on Wednesday nights, and I asked this question of the cheer parents who were with me on the live. And a lot of them said they really appreciate the physical, visual aspect of transparency. So, the ability to watch practice, the ability to see practice if it's a closed practice, there were some parents that said their gym has a ring camera in the gym at all times. So things like that are important to parents. So, and even just ask your parents, hey, how can we give you peace of mind? Because while we have so much in common and we are the same in a lot of ways, I think it's going to vary from program to program. How big is your program? How many coaching staff do you have? How many athletes do you have? How long have you been with your coaching staff? All of those relationships are going to be different, and so I think that your mode of communication and transparency is going to vary from gym to gym. So maybe just ask your parents, what can we do to support you? What can we do to help give you peace of mind? Someone else asked if this will negatively affect this current coming up season, and I don't think so, because this is the start of a very long journey. Lawsuits take a long time to get all of the information, and so I don't think that there will be any decision or bearing on the competitions scheduled in the near future that will negatively affect athletes' ability to perform and compete. I do hope that there will be positive changes even in the immediate season. I hope that athlete protection and safety will be at the forefront, and on those videos that we see at competitions, there will be resources available, and that there will be more of an emphasis on that throughout events that will reinforce a culture of transparency, communication, and protection. A lot of these questions are about varsity. So the next two are specifically about varsity. Do you think this will be the fall of varsity? And someone else asked, do you think this will be the fall of all star cheerleading? I do not. I think that if we're talking specifically about varsity, there's a better chance, again, not a lawyer, I don't have all the information, but there's a better chance of varsity facing consequences through a separate lawsuit that they are facing, and that's the antitrust lawsuit. And maybe we'll talk about that. If you guys are interested in hearing about that in a separate episode, I may do that down the line. But no, I don't think that this will be the fall of varsity. I do think that in the long run, in years to come, it's possible that varsity will have to break up its entities, or that there will be more structure or systems put in place. But no, I don't think that this will be the end of varsity. On a related note, somebody asked, are gyms boycotting varsity events? I've seen a lot of talk about this on social media, on Twitter specifically, of people saying, let's boycott varsity, let's not go to any of the USASF sanctioned events. I don't really see that happening. We'll see. Time will tell. But NCA just had its highest registration in history, and I haven't heard of gyms pulling out of that event, but time will tell. On that note, I don't think that this issue goes away with only attending independent events. And that might be a controversial thing to say, because I have heard that gyms are only going to do independent events. Gyms have been doing that for years. They have not attended varsity events for a number of reasons. But unless we address this systemically in our sport, it's going to follow us wherever we go, whether that's a varsity event or an independent event. So those independent events need to be held just as accountable as we are trying to hold varsity. And I said it last week, and I'm going to say it again. And as mad as I am at varsity for other things like the exorbitant amount of cash I have to bring to competitions and the big deal that certain events have been made that other events don't seem to matter except for this one event, I have to agree with the part of Jeff Webb's statement that says these are privately owned businesses. I know I sound like a broken record, but these are privately owned businesses that can only be regulated and enforced upon so much, if any. And so it is up to these privately owned businesses to hold themselves accountable. And you know who holds businesses accountable? Their customers. And guess who the customer is? You are. You, the parent, are the customer. And I don't like to play that card. I really never had to play that card while I was involved in All Star Cheerleading because on the other side of it, there needs to be a healthy relationship with open communication between the parent and the coaches and the all-star gym, and we're going to talk about that too. Like, I love my gym leadership, and they are still people that I speak to on a regular basis and I hold dear to my heart. So I hated that, well, I'm the customer mentality. But when it comes to enforcing change, if you don't believe that the business that you are giving your money to is going to help enact change or keep your athletes safe, that's a consumer conversation that you need to have. Hope I didn't lose any fans over that. Okay, so what comes next? So, according to the outlet Greenville News in South Carolina, they say further legal action is expected against Foster's estate, Rockstar Cheer, and other gyms and coaches. One of the attorneys who filed one of the suits says successive cases with more victims, including allegations against other gyms and coaches, including some in Greenville. He anticipates being filed in Tennessee, Georgia, North Carolina, Florida, California, and so on. So, as we get more information, I will try to update you as much as possible. But for now, we're going to get back to our regularly scheduled programming. I still have some amazing conversations that I want to share with you guys. We're not going to let this, we're going to be aware and vigilant, but we're not going to let this cast a shadow over a sport that our kids love so much. I still think send your kids to cheer. I still think it's a great sport. So, we're going to have some fun conversations, some meaningful conversations coming up in the next few weeks. As always, I so appreciate you. I appreciate your emails and your direct messages and your reviews. And honestly, I need a cocktail. So I'm going to go do that. And I'll see you guys next week.